Should a student be excluded for physically assaulting a pregnant teacher?
I think that is appropriate to exclude in those circumstances. I think it jumps straight into something I think is important, is that difference between equality and equity, in that I think that every single case needs to be looked at individually. Now, in that black and white context, I can't think of a reason why a suspension or whatever would not be appropriate in those circumstances. I think we'll talk in more detail about permanent exclusion and how that work, how we look at and operate that. But as a starting gotcha question, I think it
It wasn't necessarily gotcha. It was because it was asked, I think, in the Scottish Parliament, actually, I think last year, or in Scottish politics. I don't know if it was in Parliament. So I found the answers quite interesting to it, that various different people gave.
I think I can add to a bit of context there. So when I worked in day 6, so that's students who have already been permanently excluded, there is a lot of violence, or can be violence, in those settings. I've worked with pregnant colleagues, and students have struck and would count as assault, hit on the arm or whatever. And decisions have been made not to suspend in those circumstances. But that's been driven through conversations with that colleague, with that context, and the staff who work there and their belief in what they're doing. You don't work in alternative provision unless you're passionate about working in alternative provision. So there have been circumstances where, when you look at the surface level behaviour, pregnant staff member in a school assaulted by a pupil, where suspension has not happened, but that does come down to making sure that staff member is fully involved, and that was driven by them in that context.
Do you think that is the right approach for the member of staff to input in that way?
Yeah, I think that having staff input on situations is really, really important, because it's a staff workplace. I think, as Andrew alluded to before, that very extreme example of the rape in a school, that staff hadn't been informed, that staff hadn't been told that someone had been sexually assaulted previously. Those kind of extreme issues, and ensuring that staff are engaged. And now we're moving way lower down the spectrum of behaviour, but making sure that staff are comfortable and happy with the outcomes that have been put in place is really important, because otherwise you're creating a division between students and staff. You're creating divisions between staff and SLT, and having that input, I think, is really important. Again, that goes back to this idea that I don't think you can have a menu of sanctions where a student does this is the sanction that they get, because I think there are too many moving pieces. Even in the justice system, we've got mitigations, we've got different sentencing for the same crime, and there's so many different moving parts. It has to be handled on a case-by-case basis, and I think you have to have the input by affected staff and students as well.